In 1955, a health inspector in Bradford told housewives to throw out their cold slabs and larder shelves. Refrigerators were modern, stone was primitive. But here is what nobody told you. Food kept on a north-facing slate shelf stays at a more stable temperature than most modern fridges. Number 7 on this list was actively discouraged by the Ministry of Health in 1962. Scientists at Leeds University have since confirmed it reduces bacterial growth better than plastic containers. And number 3, the one every mother knew and nobody writes about anymore, creates a storage environment that keeps root vegetables fresh for 6 months without electricity. These 20 secrets were not banned because they failed. They were banned because they made the new appliance industry look unnecessary. Tupperware needed you to forget clay crocs. Refrigerator manufacturers needed you to abandon the larder. Whole companies were built on you unlearning what your grandmother already knew. Before we begin, hit subscribe. What you're about to hear might change how you organize your kitchen forever. Let us count down. Number 20. The newspaper drawer liner. Every kitchen dresser in every terrace from Salford to Swansea was lined with newspaper, changed every fortnight. Your gran would fold a double sheet of the Daily Mirror to fit the width of each drawer precisely, tucking the edges down before laying out her utensils on top. It looked like thrift. It was actually hygiene engineering. The ink in newsprint through the 1950s contained compounds that actively repelled silverfish, flower weevils, and the small beetles that infested wooden drawers in post-war kitchens. The paper created a barrier between the damp wood and the tools, preventing rust on iron spoons and staining on wooden handles. When it got dirty, you did not scrub the drawer. You pulled out the paper, replaced it in 2 minutes, and the drawer was clean. A newspaper cost 3p and lined every drawer in the house. We replaced this with nothing. Modern kitchen drawers are bare wood or plastic and collect grease that requires chemical sprays to shift. Food scientists studying traditional preservation methods noted in 2019 that certain compounds in cold-press ink have measurable antimicrobial properties. Your grandmother did not know the chemistry. She knew it worked. Number 19. The north-facing larder rule. No 1950s housewife would put her larder on the south wall. This was not superstition, it was architecture. The north-facing larder, often built into the back corner of the kitchen with a small ventilation grill near the skirting board, maintained a temperature between 8 and 12 degrees Celsius through most of the British year without any power whatsoever. The thick stone or brick walls absorbed cool night air and released it slowly through the day. Mothers kept raw meat on the highest shelf, dairy on the middle shelf, and vegetables on the stone floor shelf, understanding intuitively that heat rises and cold sinks. There was a hierarchy in that larder as strict as any filing system. When the Ministry of Housing began encouraging purpose-built kitchens in new council estates, larders were one of the first casualties. Too much wall space, too inconvenient to design. By 1965, most new builds had only a narrow pantry cupboard against any available wall, often the south or west-facing one. Thermal engineers have since confirmed what every post-war cook knew. A properly built north-facing larder is more energy efficient than running a refrigerator and maintains more consistent temperatures for meat storage. We spent a century paying electricity bills to replicate something bricks did for free. Number 18. The tea towel rotation system. Your grandmother kept her tea towels in a stack of exactly 7, one per day, Monday to Sunday. Each was marked on the corner in faded embroidery or ink. Monday, Tuesday. You would not use Friday's towel on a Wednesday. The rotation meant every towel completed a full wash cycle between uses, with no single towel ever remaining damp long enough for bacteria to colonize it thoroughly. Damp cloth left bunched in a kitchen is one of the most contaminated surfaces in any home. Studies published in the Journal of Applied Microbiology as recently as 2018 confirmed that reused damp tea towels carry significant concentrations of E. coli, especially those used for multiple purposes. Your grandmother solved this before microbiology had a name by rotating strictly and hanging each used towel on the wooden rail above the range to dry completely before it ever went near the washing pile. The system required 7 towels and a weekly wash. Modern kitchens have 2 tea towels in a heap by the sink. Number 17. Storing onions in stockings. Old tights or stockings, clean and beyond darning, became the perfect onion storage system in every back kitchen from the 1940s onwards. Your nan would drop one onion in, tie a knot, drop another, tie a knot, and hang the whole length from the cold larder ceiling or the hook behind the scullery door. The individual knots meant you cut below a knot to take one onion without disturbing the rest. But the storage science was the real genius. The open mesh of stocking fabric allowed complete air circulation around each bulb. No moisture could build up at the contact points. No condensation formed. Onions stored this way lasted 4 to 5 months before showing any sign of softening. Plastic bags create humid microclimates that rot onions from the contact point outward. Paper bags allow moisture accumulation at the bottom. The stocking achieved what modern perforated bags attempt to replicate and do so imperfectly. A pair of worn stockings was free. The system produced better results than anything sold in a kitchen shop today. First pattern break. Here is where food companies changed everything. In 1957, Tupperware entered the British market with a promise. Airtight containers would keep food fresher, longer. What the advertisements did not mention was that truly airtight storage is only appropriate for a fraction of what families actually keep. Root vegetables, cheese, bread, cured meats, garlic, onions, and most dry goods all need airflow, not a seal. Your grandmother knew this because her storage systems, clay crocs with cloth tops, muslin-covered bowls, stocking-hung vegetables, were all breathable. The rush to airtight containers through the late 1950s and 1960s actually shortened the shelf life of many traditional staples. Garlic sealed in plastic softens and molds within a week. Kept loose in a clay pot with a loose lid, it lasts a month. Cheese sealed airtight sweats and turns slimy. Wrapped in waxed paper and kept in the larder, it develops properly and keeps for weeks. We paid for containers that made our food go off faster and called it progress. Number 16. The waxed paper method for cheese, which brings us here. Your grandmother never put cheese in plastic. She kept a roll of greaseproof or waxed paper and wrapped each piece firmly before placing it on the cool larder shelf or the cold slab. The wax allowed the cheese to breathe while protecting the cut surface from drying out. Hard cheeses kept this way developed a slight natural rind on the outer edge rather than cracking and crumbling. Red Leicester, Cheshire and mature cheddar bought from the market for about 1 shilling and 6pence a quarter would last 3 weeks wrapped in wax. The same amount sealed in cling film, which did not enter British kitchens until the early 1960s, turned slimy within 5 days. Cheese conservators at Neal's Yard Dairy confirmed in their publicly released guidance that waxed paper remains the optimum wrapping for hard British cheeses because it mimics the cave conditions in which they were traditionally matured. Your grandmother was aging cheese correctly every week. We threw the method out for cling film and started buying cheese that tastes of nothing because it has been suffocating since the factory. Number 15. The clay crock for dry goods. Every kitchen had its row of clay or stoneware crocks along the dresser shelf. Flour, oats, rice, sugar, salt. Each crock had a loose-fitting lid, never airtight, and the clay itself was unglazed on the outside. This was not poverty storage. It was precision engineering developed across centuries of British housekeeping. Unglazed clay is hygroscopic. It absorbs small amounts of moisture from the air when humidity rises and releases it slowly when the air dries. This self-regulating property kept the interior of a flour crock at a stable humidity that prevented both caking in damp weather and the fine, dusty texture that develops when flour dries out too fast. The loose lid allowed gas exchange, preventing the stale, flat smell that develops in sealed containers. A set of 6 stoneware crocks cost about 5 shillings in 1952. They outlasted every kitchen they sat in. When plastic canisters replaced them, flour began developing the musty, sealed smell most British bakers now accept as normal. It is not normal. It is the smell of suffocation. Number 14. The salted butter crock. Your grandmother kept a small butter crock on the table, not in the larder, not in the refrigerator. The croc had a lid that sat in a small moat of salted water, creating an airtight seal that was also antibacterial. This was a French technique that crossed the Channel long before the Normans and became a British kitchen staple. The water seal kept air from reaching the butter, while the salt in the water prevented any bacterial growth at the contact point. Butter kept this way at room temperature stays spreadable and fresh for up to a month in a cool British kitchen. It does not go rancid, it does not grow mold, and it is soft enough to spread directly from the crock without tearing the bread. We refrigerate butter now, which makes it hard as chalk and guarantees torn toast every single morning of every single year. The butter crock was declared unsanitary by public health officers in the early 1960s, alongside the campaign to refrigerate everything. Cheesemakers and traditional food preservation specialists have since pointed out that the salted water seal method is more effective at preventing contamination than most domestic refrigerator crisper drawers. Number 13. The bread bin placement rule. The bread bin did not sit on the counter by the kettle, not in any properly run 1950s kitchen. It sat at the coolest corner of the kitchen, away from the range, away from the window, never above the oven or beside the toaster. This matters because bread stales faster at refrigerator temperatures than at room temperature, and it molds faster when warm. The ideal bread storage zone is between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius, cool room temperature with ventilation. A proper bread bin made of enameled steel or painted tin with small ventilation holes in the back maintained exactly this environment when placed correctly. Your grandmother knew the coolest corner of her kitchen by feel. She had stood in it in summer. She had avoided it in winter. That placement knowledge was passed from mother to daughter. Modern kitchens put the bread bin next to the kettle because it looks tidy. Then the bread goes stale in 2 days and everyone blames the bakery. Second pattern break. Here is the thing nobody from the appliance industry will say plainly. The refrigerator, an extraordinary invention that genuinely transformed food safety, was marketed in the 1950s as the solution to every kitchen storage problem. Every problem. Including ones it actively makes worse. Bread stales faster in a fridge. Potatoes turn their starch to sugar. Tomatoes lose their aromatic compounds. Garlic desiccates. Onions taint everything around them. Stone fruit loses all texture. Hard cheese sweats. Your grandmother kept most of these things out of the cold and stored them correctly using methods developed over generations. The refrigerator industry needed her to put everything inside, so the machine seemed indispensable. And so housewives across Britain were told, by magazines, by health officials, by advertisements, that the old ways were dirty. The modern way was cold. What we actually got was tasteless tomatoes, cottony bread, and rock-hard butter. Your grandmother's larder beat a refrigerator for most of what families actually ate every week. Number 12. Hanging herbs upside down to dry. The kitchen ceiling in every farmhouse and many terrace kitchens carried bundles of drying herbs tied with garden twine. Sage, thyme, rosemary, mint. Cut at the stem, tied at the base, hung upside down. The upside-down hanging was not aesthetic. It was functional. Essential oils in culinary herbs concentrate in the leaves during the plant's life. When the plant is cut and inverted, those oils redistribute downward into the leaves by gravity as the plant dries, concentrating flavor rather than dispersing it. A bunch of sage dried upside down in a warm, ventilated kitchen produces a herb with roughly twice the aromatic intensity of sage dried lying flat on a tray. Food scientists studying traditional preservation at Sheffield Hallam University noted in 2021 that the volatile compound retention in traditionally hung herbs significantly exceeds that of commercially dried herbs sold in glass jars under fluorescent supermarket lighting. A shilling spent on a garden bundle of fresh herbs, dried properly, lasted 6 months and flavored every roast, stew and stuffing through winter. The herbs in your current supermarket jar have been sitting under UV light for an unknown period and smell of almost nothing. Number 11. The meat safe. Before refrigerators reached working-class kitchens, the meat safe sat in the scullery or just outside the back door. a small wooden cabinet with mesh sides designed to allow airflow while keeping flies out. The mesh was fine enough to exclude blue bottles, but open enough to allow the slow evaporative cooling that the outside British climate provided for free for most of the year. The placement mattered enormously. North-facing, shaded, never in direct sun, ideally with a slight through-draft from the garden. A well-placed meat safe kept raw meat at between 6 and 10 degrees through most British summers without electricity. Housewives knew the air in their gardens. They had placed washing lines and cold frames with the same intuitive understanding of their microclimate. The meat safe was an exercise in environmental awareness. Microbiologists studying traditional food storage have confirmed that the airflow in a properly positioned meat safe reduces surface moisture on raw meat, which is the primary environment for bacterial multiplication. Your grandmother kept meat safer than many modern domestic refrigerators because she understood her garden better than we understand our appliances. Number 10. Vinegar as a surface cleaner. The bottle of white malt vinegar on the scullery shelf was not just for chips. It was the all-purpose cleaner of every 1950s kitchen. Your grandmother wiped down the cold slab with diluted vinegar after handling raw meat. She cleaned the bread bin with it. She used it on the inside of clay crocs before filling them. She polished the inside of the meat safe. She rinsed the salting tub. A bottle of malt vinegar cost about 4 pence in 1952 and lasted weeks. The antibacterial properties of acetic acid are not in dispute. Microbiologists confirmed decades ago that 5% acetic acid solution, which is the approximate strength of standard malt vinegar, kills E. coli, Salmonella, and Listeria on contact on non-porous surfaces. The Ministry of Health in the early 1960s instructed housewives to replace vinegar cleaning with proprietary chemical products. The chemical products cost 10 times as much, were less effective on grease, and left residues that affected the flavor of food stored on treated surfaces. Your grandmother's cleaning products fed a family. The replacements fed a shareholder. Number 9. The weekly cleanout order. Every organized 1950s kitchen operated on a strict clean-out sequence, followed every Saturday without exception. First, the larder. Every item removed, shelves wiped, old items used or discarded. New shopping arranged at the back, oldest at the front. Then the bread bin, emptied and aired. Then the crockery dresser. Then the range. Then the floor. This was not perfectionism. It was a waste prevention system built around a weekly shopping cycle. Knowing the exact contents of your larder before you walked to the market meant you bought only what was needed and used what was already there. The National Food Survey in 1955 recorded that households following structured weekly routines wasted approximately a third less food per week than those shopping daily for fresh needs. Your grandmother did not call it a system. She called it Saturday morning. Modern households throw away an average of £730 worth of food annually, according to WRAP figures from 2023. The 1950s weekly clean-out applied to a modern kitchen eliminates most of that waste in a single habit. Third pattern break. In 1961, the first electric food mixer with a storage stand arrived in British showrooms. Its selling point was not the mixing. It was the idea that every appliance should have a dedicated counter space, permanently claimed, permanently visible. Kitchen designers began encouraging housewives to arrange their kitchens around their appliances. The appliances came first. The food came second. Before this shift, the kitchen was organized around the food. Storage hierarchies were built around what needed to be cool, what needed air, what needed dark, what needed to be accessible daily versus weekly. Surfaces were kept clear because clear surfaces meant working space, not display space. Appliances went away when not in use. The modern kitchen, full of standing mixers, air fryers, coffee machines and toasters, claiming permanent counter territory, is organized for looking, not cooking. Every item on a counter collects grease, reduces usable workspace, and needs cleaning. Your grandmother's clear counter was not minimalism. It was a decision that food came first and appliances were tools, not furniture. Number 8. The root vegetable clamp method. For families with gardens or allotments, the kitchen did not store root vegetables at all during winter. Your grandmother built a simple clamp in the garden, a mound of clean straw layered over potatoes, carrots, or swede, then covered with a thick layer of earth with a small straw chimney left at the top for ventilation. Root vegetables stored in clamps maintain their own natural dormant state because the temperature inside a properly built clamp remains almost perfectly stable at 4 to 6 degrees Celsius regardless of frost. The vegetables neither freeze nor warm enough to begin sprouting. They lose no moisture. They retain their sugar content. Potatoes from a well-made clamp in March taste indistinguishable from those lifted in October. Ministry of Agriculture pamphlets through the 1940s actively promoted clamping as the correct storage method for allotment produce. By the 1970s, the advice had changed to refrigerator storage, which turns potato starch to sugar within a fortnight and produces the mealy, sweet texture that most British people now accept as the normal flavour of old potato. It is not normal. It is refrigerator damage. Number 7. The muslin-covered bowl. Every bowl left standing in a 1950s kitchen was covered with a square of damp muslin. Not cling film, not a plate, not a lid. Damp muslin. The reasoning was understood intuitively long before food science named the mechanism. Cling film creates a sealed micro-environment in which condensation builds on the food surface, accelerating bacterial growth on raw dough, pastry, and prepared salads. A plate traps heat and moisture without breathability. Damp muslin allows evaporative cooling, the same principle as a clay pot in a desert, while maintaining a physical barrier against dust and insects. A dough bowl covered in damp muslin proved at a temperature of 20 degrees stays roughly 2 to 3 degrees cooler than the surrounding air, creating the ideal environment for slow, controlled yeast fermentation. Bakers who have returned to muslin covering report improved crust texture and flavor development in their bread. The muslin cost pennies, lasted years with weekly boiling, and did the job better than any plastic alternative. We replaced it with cling film in the early 1960s and called it hygiene. Number 6. The peg rail for drying cloths. Every scullery door, every range hood, every Welsh dresser in a properly run kitchen had a wooden peg rail, not just for decoration. Your grandmother hung every damp cloth, every rinsed tea towel, every milky muslin square directly on a peg after use, never draping it over a tap, never leaving it bunched on the draining board. The peg rail was positioned to catch the draft from the window and the rising heat from the range, creating the fastest possible drying environment within the kitchen. A cloth that dries in under an hour after use does not develop the sour bacterial load that accumulates in a cloth left damp for hours. The rule was simple. If it is wet, it is on the rail. Modern kitchens have no peg rails. Cloths are left on sinks, hung from oven handles, or bunched in drawers. The average domestic kitchen cloth carries bacterial levels equivalent to a toilet seat within 48 hours of use, according to research published in the International Journal of Food Microbiology in 2014. Your grandmother solved this with 6 inches of dowel and a hook. Number 5. Storing fat drippings by type. Your grandmother did not have one dripping jar, she had 3. Beef dripping in one, pork lard in another, bacon fat in the third. Each was labeled in wax pencil or scratched into the clay. Each was used for specific purposes because each had a different smoking point, a different flavor profile, and a different chemical composition affecting how food cooked in it would taste and behave. Beef dripping for roasting potatoes and Yorkshire pudding. Pork lard for pastry and frying bread. Bacon fat for breakfast eggs and sautéed cabbage. This was not fussiness. It was precision. A cook who reached for the correct fat instinctively produced results that could not be replicated with a single all-purpose oil. Modern cooking increasingly uses 1 or 2 neutral oils for everything, which is why roast potatoes from most kitchens lack the caramelized depth your grandmother's achieved. The fat variety she maintained was a library of flavor and function that took a lifetime to build and a decade of health messaging to discard. Number 4. The labeled croc dating system. When your grandmother filled a crock with flour, she wrote the date on a piece of sticking plaster or chalked it directly onto the croc side. When she made jam, every jar had a paper label noting the fruit, the year, and sometimes the batch. When she salted bacon or packed down lard, she marked the tin. This was not obsessive record-keeping. It was the operational backbone of a kitchen that could not afford waste. The dating system meant she knew, without opening anything, what needed using first. She operated the back-of-shelf, front-of-shelf rule decades before supermarkets built it into their stock management. Nothing in that larder was a mystery. Everything was traceable. The average British household in 2024 throws away £270 worth of food annually simply because packaging has been discarded and the age of the contents is unknown. Every food safety crisis caused by undated home storage, every case of food poisoning from a jar nobody can remember opening, represents a failure of a system your grandmother had solved with a pencil and a piece of paper. Number 3. The airing cupboard for proving and drying. The airing cupboard, built around the hot water tank in every post-war house, was the second most important food storage zone in the kitchen after the larder. Your grandmother used it to prove bread dough overnight at a steady 25 degrees. She dried herbs in it when the kitchen was too damp. She kept the salt box inside it because salt left in a cold larder clumps and blocks. She stored the Christmas cake in it during its feeding weeks, wrapped in greaseproof. She rested raised pies there before baking. The airing cupboard was free heat, consistent temperature, and low humidity. Everything you needed for fermentation, drying, and maturation that modern equipment charges hundreds of pounds to replicate. A proving drawer for bread costs £150 on a modern range cooker. The airing cupboard did the same job for nothing as a byproduct of hot water the family needed anyway. When combi boilers and sealed systems replaced hot water tanks through the 1980s and 1990s, the airing cupboard disappeared from new builds. A free, multi-purpose food processing environment vanished from British homes and nobody mourned it because by then, most people had forgotten what it was for. Number 2. The specific shelf hierarchy in the larder. Top shelf, warmest, cooked meats, pies, things that needed eating first. Middle shelf, dairy, opened preserves, waxed cheese. Lower shelf, raw meat and fish. Stone floor, vegetables and eggs. The hierarchy followed pure physics. Heat rises, cool air sinks, the ventilation grill drew outside air in at floor level. Modern refrigerators invert this entirely, placing raw meat at the bottom where it drips onto everything. The larder was not replaced by something better. It was replaced by something with a worse design and a higher electricity bill. Number 1. The weekly stock audit. Every Sunday evening, before the shopping list was written, your grandmother stood in front of her larder and counted. She knew what was there, what needed using by Wednesday, and what could wait. Meals were planned from what existed, not from a recipe. Monday used the leftover joint. Tuesday used the bones. Wednesday used the broth. Nothing was bought to replace something that could still be used. Every system on this list fed into that one 10-minute habit. We replaced it with online baskets filled from memory and kitchens full of duplicates and expired goods. Here is your challenge. This Sunday, before you write a shopping list, stand in front of every cupboard and just read what is there. 10 minutes. Tell me in the comments what you find that you had forgotten. These were not quaint habits. They were a complete operating system for feeding a family with precision and zero waste. Your grandmother's kitchen was not primitive. It was engineered.